I don't want to hear anyone saying that this is an anime of the year. Made in Abyss? What's that? Boku no Hero? Get out of here! This episode of Houseki no Kuni just cemented it as one of my favorite series of all time. And obviously that's subject to change over the course of time, but this episode just made me put this series on a level that I am always so cautious to put any series on. I only have a very select few of favorite anime series, and I think if this is what we're getting for the rest of this series, it is right on track to be in there, because my fucking god, this episode! Hey everybody, I'm PhenomSage, welcome back to another, it doesn't matter, we're getting into this episode, this absolutely incredible, fantastic, emotional, existential episode. Jesus Christ, dude. I might seem hyperbolic right now, but like, I cannot express my feelings towards this episode than any other way right now. I really want to get into this review right now, but I said to myself that I wanted to shout out somebody for making something apparent to me, for giving me some information. Thank you to Butter on Twitter for giving me some information about when the OST for this series is being released. Nobody else has brought this to my attention, so I figured I would bring this to everybody else's attention. The official soundtrack for Houseki no Kuni will be released on January 17th. And apparently will contain 48 tracks. My god, dude. And if you watch this episode and you do not have the desire to get that soundtrack right now, I don't know what to tell you. You're beyond help. That OST in this episode, we'll talk about that. But my god, I cannot wait for this official soundtrack to be released. I wish it was before the final episode aired so that way I could include some tracks in my videos, but that's okay. It'll be there for those manga reviews when we get to them because, oh my god, this OST is so good. So thank you again to Butter for telling me about that. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested and looking forward to this soundtrack release. I know I am. Anyways, let's get into this episode. I cannot wait any longer. Obviously, the highlight of this episode is Foes getting her new arms, but that is not the detail that stuck out the most in this episode. Foes as a character has just been consistently bringing it every single episode. Her character arc, her development, it's all been fantastic. And it feels like last episode I said that moment at the end of the episode was a high point. I meant to say that it is the beginning of the high point. And if that's the beginning of the high point, this is the high point proper. We are finally getting into a deeper, more complex Foes on the outside. It feels like for the most part she's kept her emotions on the inside, trying to bounce back from all her failures. This time she just could not, and that is made very apparent at the end of this episode. Foes now has gold arms, but it is not enough to do anything by the time Antarcticite is taken. And I love this line. This is probably my favorite line of the episode. These new arms of mine are strong. I haven't given up. I found the courage to push beyond my limits. So why? Why are they still getting away? And Foes, oh my god, dude, I can't even formulate my thoughts right now. I'm fresh off of that episode. I wanted to record this immediately because of how passionate I am about what just happened. There are so many furious lines that Foes says this episode. This is some of the most angry, vitriol, just spiteful lines I've ever heard Tomoyo Kurosawa's voice actress ever perform, and she performed them beautifully. She is easily the highlight of this episode for me. The voice actress, she displayed so much range and so much character that it just brought these emotions to life. This hopeless yet determined and angered. She's angry at so many things in this episode. She's angry at the Lunarians. She's angry at the gold on her arm. She's angry at herself. And we feel that anger just coming off of the screen. And it's very unsettling seeing a character like Foes go into this state of just pure anger. And that's why I was looking forward to this development for so long, because Foes is just such a peppy, upbeat character. So seeing her reach a new low like this is just fantastic. I mean, not for the character, but for me as a viewer, I love seeing this level of complexity in Foes. But by the time Antarcticite is gone and she realizes she's failed, that anger just disappears and it just turns into complete hopelessness. I've commented on Foes' feelings of hopelessness in the past. This is just a new level. Like, she looks like she's ready to just die. And I don't blame her. These blunders that she's been responsible for, all of these episodes have just been building up more and more, and they've been getting more and more serious. And this was just the final straw. At least the amethyst never got taken away, but now Antarcticite is gone. He is basically dead at this point. And it makes me wonder what kind of mindset that Foes will be in once she's bounced back. From that preview, it's looking like it's all over the board. Maybe she's faking happiness for the other gems, but we see this shot of her at the end that just looks utterly defeated and depressed. And it's just so interesting to see where Foes will go at this point. And the fact that she has gold arms now, gold arms that will be very, very useful judging from how the battle with the Lunarians just went. I think she'll be in a mindset where she thinks that she needs to replace more of herself until she's finally able to keep up with the Lunarians and can protect all of the gems by herself. I don't think that she's going to think about smashing herself anytime soon, but I think that that is something that's occurring in her mind, is that she needs to get stronger, and that both times that she's lost her body parts, each time she's gained something new that has just made her stronger, and maybe that'll be her mentality, that she needs that going forward as much as possible. One of my other favorite lines of the episode is when Foes is struggling to get the gold to cooperate with her because Antarcticite is being taken away as they speak. And this goes back into some of the more spiteful lines I talked about. Foes is just struggling to get it to work, and then she just snaps, and you hear her just say, "Do what I say, you worthless junk." And it's just so good. That is the point where I realized that we were no longer dealing with happy, more upbeat Foes. We were in a completely new ballpark. A new Foes that is just determined to save Antarcticite no matter the cost. And the final few moments of the episode where Sensei catches Foes and is just holding her, and Foes just says, "Antarcticite suffered for me." And Sensei just says, "I must take the blame." And you get these incredible close-up shots of Sensei, and you can tell that they are all hand-drawn just to communicate that blank feeling that all of them are having right now. And it really works, which just leads into this incredible ED sequence, replacing the normal ED with a new insert song, actually sung by Foes' voice actress Tomoyo Kurosawa. And it's just a shot of the tub that Antarcticite sleeps in. It's beautifully done. I am not even going to lie, I teared up in the reaction that you'll see. I forgot to even mention that there was a reaction because I was so caught up in this episode and talking about it. But yes, there is a reaction down there. I decided to make one for this episode because people had told me it was good, and I teared up in this scene because I'm weird. I feel like even more than subject material making me cry, it's really presentation that makes me cry. If you have emotional subject material and you just have this godlike presentation, you will most likely get tears out of me, and it got me tearing up. It is beautifully done. The only jarring aspect of that ending was getting into the preview and that normal fighting music started playing. I was like, okay, this is kind of ruining the moment, but that's okay. That's not even related to the episode, but just absolutely fantastically done. The ending sequence, the entire final act of the episode is one of my favorite moments in anime this year and maybe of all time. With that final scene talked about to a full extent, I feel like I covered all of my feelings regarding that. Let's get into some of the other aspects to this episode that were interesting. Obviously, you're going to see most people just talking about that final sequence just because it's so incredible, but I have some things to say about other things that we saw in this episode. For one, I have questioned before how these gems are actually born and how they actually come about, and it was told to me that it will be addressed in the future, and it is addressed here how these gems are actually born and how they come into this world. And we actually go to the very place where this happens, called Cord Shore. And I heard that that's not the official name for it in the manga, that they changed that name, but I'm gonna call it Cord Shore, and this is where the gems are born. And basically the act of them being born is that there's this giant stone, almost monolith or mountain, that exudes gems because of the substances coming from the ocean up into the monolith or the stone and then being pushed out. When we get there, we see multiple gems being pushed out, and we see the ground littered with tons of stray gems. And I was like, wait, why are there so many gems here? There was almost a full body gem that just pushed out. Is that a person now? But we learned from Antarcticite that barely any of these gems actually turn into people. They're mostly just stray gems and nothing else. But there will be rare occurrences where the substances come out and they come out as people or as a person. So I'm glad we got some explanation on that, a little bit of world building in this episode to help understand how these gems came to be in the first place. Another thing that's interesting about this episode is how lighthearted almost the first half is. Walking into this episode, I expected it to be pretty much just nonstop misery because Foes is missing her arms. And the atmosphere was tricking me a bit because it seemed like it was lighthearted, but I was expecting something. I was like, oh no, what is going to happen here? Oh no, what is this? What's going on? But it's actually surprisingly lighthearted, with Foes making jokes about missing her arms and just having very comedic dialogue again, not feeling forced at all again. The comedy is as great as ever with Foes. And that just goes to show that you can go from a comedic Foes in the first half to just this furious, spiteful Foes in the second half. Shout out to Kurosawa again for just being a phenomenal voice actress. But yeah, it was a little misleading in the beginning with how not sad everything was. Although there is a point in the beginning where Antarcticite is almost close to crying because he could not save Foes' arms. And I was like, wait, what? Why do you care so much about Foes at this point? Because before, it seemed like Antarcticite wanted Foes to lose her arms. But now when he comes back empty-handed and Foes is just armless, Foes is the one who's like, oh, everything's fine, don't worry. And Antarcticite is just almost sobbing into Sensei saying, I failed, I'm just the worst. I'm sorry I couldn't save them. This is my biggest blunder. And I was just wondering why he was taking it all so seriously. Like, obviously it is a very serious thing and it makes sense why somebody would be emotional about it. I just didn't really expect that from Antarcticite. Even Sensei is just in awe that Foes is missing her arms and is just, it almost looks like he's wondering what is going to happen now, just like I am. Which ties into a bit of dialogue that I just wanted to mention. When Antarc is fighting the Lunarians, there's just this fantastic piece of dialogue where Antarc loses part of his hand to the Lunarians, it gets cut off or whatever, and he just goes berserk. He's like, do not take my memories with Sensei, I won't let you. Or something to that effect. And that might actually explain why he cares so much about Foes' arms being missing, because he realizes that the value of memories cannot be overstated. And I still wonder from last episode, it's still not made very apparent what Foes has actually lost from her memories by losing her arms. I guess we'll find out next episode if she's actually forgotten anybody, but it is very interesting and I'm wondering where they'll go with this in terms of memory loss. And lastly, I should comment on just the sheer perfection of the technical elements in this episode. We get a large fight sequence between Antarcticite and the Lunarians. It's incredible, the choreography. Antarcticite sledding on his sword going to the Lunarians, just flipping and turning. Always just so incredible. And then the final act with Foes using her new formed gold powers and running after the Lunarians herself, using the gold as a push to jump up and try and attack them or reach them or whatever. That was also beautifully choreographed, absolutely fantastic. The direction and action in this episode is on par with episode 3 as the best in the series. It was incredible. And lastly, I mentioned it at the beginning, but the soundtrack. The fucking soundtrack. My god, I need this OST right now. I've praised the OST this entire series, but this is just newfound greatness. Brand new tracks that we have not heard before, put into these scenes and are just utilized beautifully. The scene where Antarcticite is fighting the Lunarians. The scene where Foes is fighting the Lunarians and chasing after them and using her newfound gold powers. The scene where Foes is struggling with her gold powers. The ED. It is amazing. It cannot be overstated. Well, I'm out of breath. I did this entire review just basically gushing out my feelings for this episode because it is just insane how good this episode was. One of my favorite episodes of the year. The series just legit just gets better and better. Thank you guys for watching so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the reaction in the description and enjoyed this review because I very much enjoyed this episode. And I'd love to keep talking about it with you guys in the comments. I imagine that most of you probably loved this episode as much as I did because I don't see why you wouldn't. This episode was 10 out of 10, just amazing, perfection. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for the support, the comments, the likes, everything. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the comments about this episode. And as always, have a great day.